Nobody knew her name. Nobody knew where she came from. Nobody knew why. On a cold morning 27 years ago, a teenage girl with tears on her face and no memory in her eyes was left at the door of an orphanage and never claimed. She had nothing. No bag. No family. No past. No name to write in the register. She could not even tell them what her own mother looked like. Just a ruby necklace around her neck. Deep red, warm gold. That she could not explain and could not bring herself to remove. And somewhere across the city, a billionaire was tearing the world apart searching for her missing daughter, never once imagining that the girl she had been looking for had already been swallowed by the system, growing up invisible, growing up as nobody, carrying the one object that could have ended 27 years of grief in a single moment. The years passed. The billionaire never stopped looking. The girl never stopped wondering. And the necklace never left her neck. Then one evening, at a glittering party full of powerful people and expensive champagne, a woman in a gray catering uniform walked past the wrong person, and everything that had been buried for nearly 3 decades cracked open all at once. She was carrying a tray of champagne glasses when the most powerful woman in the room went completely still. Not because of anything Grace said. Not because of anything Grace did. Grace was nobody at this party. She was staff. She was background. She was the kind of woman people looked through without even realizing they were doing it. But Victoria Harrington, 74 years old, worth more money than most people could imagine, was staring at something around Grace's neck with the expression of someone who had just watched a ghost walk through a locked door. The room had 500 guests, crystal chandeliers, a string quartet, flower arrangements that cost more than Grace's monthly rent. And in the middle of all of it, one small red necklace was about to unravel a secret so carefully hidden, so deliberately buried, that when it finally came into the light, not a single person who heard the story would ever forget it. Some secrets stay quiet for years. Some stay quiet for decades. This one had been quiet for 27 years. Tonight, it was done being quiet. Hello, friends. Welcome to today's story. I want you to get very comfortable right now. Put down whatever you're doing, grab something to drink, and stay right here with me. Because what I am about to tell you is a kind of story that will make you feel everything all at once. You will be angry. You will cry. You will gasp, and when it is all over, you will sit back and think about it for a long time. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to where it all started. Grace had a habit of disappearing into rooms. Not in a magical way. Not in any way that would make a person turn their head or ask questions. She simply had the kind of face that people looked past. The kind of voice that got swallowed by background noise. The kind of body that people moved around without thinking. The way you walk around a chair or step over a crack in the pavement. She was 43 years old. She had a small apartment with a window that faced a brick wall. She had a gray coat she wore in all seasons because the lining was warm and she could not afford to replace it. She had calluses on her hands from washing dishes and carrying trays and mopping floors. She had 3 jobs, sometimes 4, and still every month the money ran out before the bills did. But Grace was not bitter. That was the strange thing about her. She had every reason to be hard and cold and closed off from the world. She had grown up in foster homes, passed from house to house like something no one really wanted to keep. She had no mother she could remember, no father, no siblings, no photographs of herself as a baby, no one to call on her birthday, no one who had ever said, "You look just like your grandmother," or "You have your father's laugh." She had nothing, nothing except the necklace. It was always there, around her neck, against her skin, warm even in the coldest months. A ruby necklace, deep red, set in gold, with a delicate chain that somehow had never broken in all the years she wore it. She could not remember a time without it. The first house mother at the orphanage had told her it was around her neck when she arrived. Nobody knew where it came from. Nobody seemed to care very much. But Grace cared. She would hold it sometimes. Late at night when the apartment was quiet and the city outside was loud, and she felt that hollow feeling she could never quite name, she would hold the necklace and feel, somehow, that it was trying to tell her something, that it was the one thread connecting her to whoever she had been before. She never took it off, not even to sleep. On the night everything changed, Grace was working a catering shift at a charity gala. It was the kind of event that cost more to attend than she earned in a full year. The hall was enormous and dripping with golden light. There were crystal chandeliers the size of cars and flower arrangements that probably cost more than her rent, and women in dresses that swished when they walked like they were made of water. Grace moved through it all quietly, carrying a silver tray of champagne glasses, her gray uniform pressed and clean, her hair pinned back neatly. She was good at this. She had learned, over many years, how to carry things without spilling them, how to smile without being noticed, how to exist in a room without becoming part of it. She did not know that tonight, for the first time in her life, someone was going to notice her. Victoria Harrington was 74 years old, and she moved through every room like she owned it, because she usually did. She had built her fashion empire from almost nothing, starting with a small clothing store she had opened at the age of 22 with borrowed money and a stubbornness that frightened people who did not know her and impressed the ones who did. By 30, she was famous. By 40, she was powerful. By 50, her name was on buildings. She had money that could solve problems most people did not even know existed. She had lawyers who answered calls at midnight and doctors who made house visits and assistants who could arrange almost anything within the hour. She had a son, Ethan, who ran the business side of her empire and who everyone agreed was brilliant and charming and exactly the kind of heir a woman like Victoria should have. She had everything, except her daughter. Isabella had disappeared 27 years ago. She had been 16 years old, sharp and funny and kind, with dark eyes that looked right through people in the best possible way, and a laugh that filled rooms. She had been everything Victoria had not expected to love. So completely until she did. They had been on a family holiday. Isabella had been happy that week. Victoria remembered that very clearly. The way people remember details that later become unbearable. She had been laughing at dinner the night before. She had been talking about the dress she wanted for her upcoming birthday party, the one Victoria had already commissioned from a jeweler in Paris. And then she was gone. The investigation that followed was the most painful thing Victoria had ever endured, and she had endured many painful things. Police came and went. Detectives made promises and broke them. Tips arrived and led nowhere. Money was spent in enormous amounts on private investigators who eventually, quietly, stopped returning her calls. The case went cold. The world moved on. Ethan told her, gently, that she needed to accept what had probably happened. That Isabella was gone. That holding on was making her sick. That was time to let go. Victoria never let go. She still kept Isabella's bedroom exactly as it had been. She still paid a small team to monitor missing persons databases across the country. She still really looked, at every young woman she passed who might be the right age, studying faces, searching for something familiar in the curve of a jaw or the angle of an eye. She had not found her, not in 27 years, but she had never stopped looking. The gala was one of Victoria's events, a fundraiser for a children's foundation she had established years ago. She stood near the far end of the room, listening politely to a man she did not particularly like talk about something she was only half following when she saw it, a flash of red. At first, she thought it was nothing, a piece of jewelry on one of the guests, maybe catching the chandelier light at a certain angle. She turned back to the man who was talking, but her eyes moved again. There was a woman with a serving tray moving between the tables. She was wearing a gray catering uniform. She had her hair pinned back. She was not looking at anyone in particular, just doing her job, moving quietly the way people at these events were trained to move, like furniture, almost like something that served a purpose and was otherwise invisible, except for the necklace. Victoria stopped breathing. She knew that necklace. She knew every curve of it, every detail. She had spent hours with the jeweler going over the design, choosing the exact shade of the ruby, approving the setting of the gold, demanding small adjustments until it was perfect. She had held it in her hands before it was wrapped and given. She had seen it one last time around her daughter's neck on the morning of the day Isabella disappeared. There was no other necklace like in the world. She had made certain of that. The jeweler had confirmed it. There was only one, and it was around the neck of a woman carrying champagne glasses across a ballroom floor. Victoria did not think. She did not plan. She did not calculate or compose herself the way she had spent a lifetime learning to do. She simply moved. Stop. Her voice came out louder than she intended. Or maybe it was exactly as loud as it needed to be. The word cut across 3 conversations and landed on the woman with the tray, who stopped and turned and looked at Victoria with polite confusion. "Ma'am," the woman said. Victoria walked toward her. The room was already beginning to quiet. People turned to look, because when Victoria Harrington stopped a conversation and walked somewhere with that kind of speed, you looked. Victoria stopped directly in front of the woman and stared at the necklace. Up close, there was no doubt. None at all. It was the exact necklace. She could see the tiny mark on the gold setting that she had requested specifically. A small letter I, barely visible unless you knew it was there, worked into the design like a hidden signature. "That necklace," Victoria said. Her voice was shaking. She had not heard her own voice shake in a very long time. "That necklace belongs to my missing daughter." The room went completely silent. Grace, because that was a name she had lived under for as long as she could remember, stared at the older woman in front of her. She felt the blood move away from her face. She had no idea what was happening. She did not know this woman. She had never seen her before tonight. "I'm sorry," Grace said carefully. "I think you might be mistaken. This necklace has been mine since I was a child." "It was not made for you," Victoria said. "It was made for my daughter, for her 16th birthday. There is no other necklace like it. Not anywhere. It cannot exist on someone else's neck unless—" She stopped herself. Something passed across her face. Not anger, but something much older and much deeper than anger. Something that had been waiting for 27 years to become something other than grief. "Where did you get it?" she asked. "I've always had it," Grace said, and her voice was small now and a little frightened, but also honest in a way that Victoria could feel. "I grew up in foster care. It was around my neck when I came to the orphanage. I've never taken it off." The room had become the kind of quiet where people barely moved. And then, from the side of the room, a firm and polished voice cut through everything. "Mother, that is enough." Ethan Harrington was 50 years old and had the kind of face that made people trust him immediately, which was something he had worked on for a very long time. He was tall and well-dressed, with silver at his temples and a calm in his manner that people in boardrooms found reassuring. He had run the Harrington business empire for years, managing the legal side, the financial side, the public side, all the parts that Victoria had gradually handed over to him as she had gotten older. He was good at it. Everyone said so. He crossed the room now with smooth, unhurried steps, the way he did everything. Smoothly, unhurriedly, as though he had already decided how every situation would end. He placed himself beside Victoria and smiled at Grace, and it was a very convincing smile. "I apologize for the disruption," he said to Grace. "My mother has been through a great deal. I hope you'll understand." He took Victoria gently by the arm. "Come, Mother, let's go somewhere quieter." "I am not going anywhere," Victoria said. There was steel in her voice. Ethan's smile did not change, but something behind his eyes did. Just briefly, just for a moment, a flicker of something that was gone so fast that only a person watching very closely would have caught it. Grace caught it. She did not know why. She could not have explained it. But something in the way this man had come across the room, that particular kind of hurried disguise as calm, made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. "She's obviously a fraud," Ethan said lightly, still smiling. "Someone trying to take advantage of a vulnerable—" "She is not a fraud," Victoria said, and the way she said it was so certain, so completely without any room for argument, that Ethan stopped talking. Victoria looked at Grace, not past her, the way everyone else looked, directly at her. "I would like to speak with you privately," she said, "if you are willing." Grace looked at this woman, this powerful, elegant, trembling woman with fierce eyes and a grief in her face that seemed to have been living there for decades. And something happened in Grace's chest, a feeling she could not name, like a door in a house she had never known creaking open just slightly. "Okay," Grace said, "I'm willing." The Harrington estate sat behind a gate at the end of a long road lined with trees, so tall and old they felt like a different country. Grace sat in the back of the car that Victoria had sent for her the next morning, watching the trees go past a window, and tried to steady the feeling in her stomach. She had called in sick to her other jobs. She had sat in her apartment the night before, unable to sleep, the necklace held in both hands, thinking about the look on that woman's face. Not the power in it, not the money in it, but the raw, naked, desperate love in it. She had never seen anyone look at her like that before. She did not know what to do with it. The house was larger than anything she had imagined. Not just big, but alive in a way that houses become alive when they hold enough years and enough stories. There were paintings on the walls and flowers and tall vases and carpets, so thick her shoes sank into them. A woman showed her through the hallway and into a sitting room where Victoria was already waiting. Victoria rose when Grace came in. She was wearing no jewelry today, and her hair was down, and somehow she looked both older and more real than she had in the ballroom. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for the invitation," Grace said. They sat across from each other, and for a moment neither of them spoke, and the silence was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happens when two people are both trying to find the right place to begin. "Tell me about yourself," Victoria said finally. "From the beginning, everything." So Grace did. She told Victoria about the first foster home, where the house mother had been kind but overwhelmed, and there had been too many children and not enough of anything. She told her about the second home and the third. She told her about the orphanage, a gray building with long corridors and small windows, where she had arrived as a girl with no memory of where she had come from. She told her about how the necklace had always been there, about how she had asked many times over the years if anyone knew anything about her past, and always received the same answer: "We don't know. The records are gone." Victoria listened without interrupting, but her hands, folded in her lap, were not still. "How old were you when you arrived at the orphanage?" she asked. "They estimated I was about 16 or 17, Grace said. "I'd lost my memory. Temporarily, they said. I couldn't tell them my name. I couldn't tell them anything. After a while, most of the memories came back, I think, but not about before. Not about whoever I was before I got there." Victoria was very quiet for a very long time. "Your eyes," she said finally. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I have been sitting here trying to understand why I cannot stop looking at your eyes." Grace waited. "Isabella had those eyes," Victoria said. "That exact shade, that exact shape. I have not seen eyes like that since I lost her." Over the following week, Victoria invited Grace to the estate every day. She told herself she was simply gathering information. She told herself she was being careful, being rational, not letting hope run ahead of evidence. She told herself many sensible things in the quiet hours of the morning when she could not sleep, but the truth was different from the sensible things. Because the more time she spent with Grace, the more she noticed things she could not explain away. The way Grace tilted her head to the left when she was thinking hard about something. Isabella had done that. The way Grace hummed quietly without realizing she was doing it when she was concentrating. Isabella had done that too. The way Grace said, "Well, the thing is," before making a point she felt strongly about, as though she needed to give the idea a little runway before it launched. Victoria had heard that exact phrase in that exact cadence from Isabella's mouth more times than she could count. And there were the other things, the physical things, the things that could not be explained away quite so easily. The similarity in their hands, the way they both held their coffee cups, the small scar above Grace's right eyebrow that matched the description in the medical records Victoria had kept from the investigation. A fall, when Isabella was 12, against the corner of a kitchen counter. Grace did not know about any of this. She did not know she was being observed and measured and compared. Or maybe she did know, in some part herself, because she kept coming back. Every day, she came back. Meanwhile, in a different part of the city, Ethan Harrington was making phone calls. He had been making many phone calls since the night of the gala. His voice on these calls was always quiet and controlled, because Ethan's voice was always quiet and controlled. But the people on the other end of those calls could hear something underneath the control, something tight and urgent and afraid. He had hired investigators. He was watching Grace. He was also watching his mother. He was receiving daily updates on what was being discussed at the estate, who was coming and going, what documents his mother was requesting. Ethan had always been very good at managing situations. He had spent his whole adult life doing exactly that. He told himself this was just another situation. He told himself he could manage it. He had told himself that before. Now, friends, I need you to stay very close here, because what Victoria discovered next is the part of this story that will make you put your hand over your mouth. And before we go there, if you have been with this story from the beginning, please share it right now with someone you know. Send it to a friend. We want to hear from you in the comments. Tell us what you are feeling right now. Are you already suspicious of Ethan? Leave a comment. We will be reading them. Okay, now let us go back to Victoria, because she had just found something. Victoria had kept a box. It was a large box, very heavy, that had lived in the corner of her private study for 27 years. It contained everything from the investigation into Isabella's disappearance. Every report, every statement, every piece of paper that anyone had ever handed her. She had not opened it in years. She had not been able to. She opened it now. She spent 3 days going through it, page by page, alone. She did not tell Ethan. She did not tell her assistant. She sat on the floor of her study surrounded by papers and read everything she had not been able to read in a decade. And she found the name, Detective Raymond Carter. He had led the initial investigation. He had been the one to tell her, 6 months after Isabella disappeared, that the trail had gone cold, that they had done everything possible, that he was sorry. He had retired 11 years ago. Victoria had a private investigator find his address within 24 hours. She drove there herself, which was something she almost never did anymore. Raymond Carter answered the door of a small house with a garden that was slightly overgrown and a dog that barked once, and then went back to sleep. He was in his 70s now, heavy set, with the kind of face that had done many years of looking at things it wished it had not seen. When he saw Victoria, the color left his face. "Mrs. Harrington," he said. "I need you to tell me the truth," Victoria said. "Not what you told me back then. The truth." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stepped back from the doorway. "You'd better come in," he said. What Raymond Carter told Victoria, sitting at his kitchen table with his dog at his feet and his hands wrapped around a mug he never drank from, was this. The investigation had been going well. For the first 3 months, they had been building a clear picture of what had happened. There were leads. There were witnesses. There was a thread that, if followed carefully, would have unraveled everything. Then he received a call. He would not name the person on the phone, even now. He said only that it was someone very powerful. Someone connected to Harrington family in a way that gave him the ability to make serious problems for Raymond Carter personally, professionally, and in ways that would affect his family. "They told me to close the case," he said. "They told me the leads were dead ends. They gave me new witness statements that had been changed from the originals, and they made it very clear what would happen if I kept going." Victoria's hands on the table were very still. "Did you know who you were protecting?" she asked. Raymond Carter looked at her, and in his face there was 27 years of something that was not quite guilt and not quite shame, but was made of the same material. "I had suspicions," he said. Raymond Carter gave Victoria one name before she left. Margaret Ellis, a retired nurse who had worked at a hospital 27 years ago. Raymond had interviewed her during the investigation and then been told to scratch her name from the records. He had done it, but he had kept the original interview hidden in a folder at the back of a cabinet in his home. Because even a man who did the wrong thing sometimes keeps evidence that one day he might do right. Margaret Ellis was 68 years old and lived alone. When Victoria found her, she was sitting in a small living room with a blanket across her knees, even though the day was warm, the way some people sit when they have spent a long time keeping something heavy and cold. She did not need much persuading to talk. "I have been waiting for someone to ask me," she said simply. "I gave up hoping a long time ago, but I never forgot." What she described was this. 27 years ago, a teenage girl had been brought to the hospital late at night. She was injured. Not seriously, but there were bruises and a head wound that had bled considerably. She was confused. She could not say her name or where she had come from. She was, the nurses estimated, somewhere between 15 and 17 years old. The girl had been wearing a ruby necklace. "We tried to find out who she was, Margaret said. We kept her for 2 days. By the end of the second day, 2 men came to the hospital. They were not police, they had badges. But I saw the badge of one of them up close, and it did not look right to me. They said they were taking the girl into care. They said her family had been located. They seemed very sure and very official, and I was young, and I believed them. But, Victoria said, but the girl was frightened of them, Margaret said. She did not speak much because she could not remember much, but she pulled away from them. She looked at me before they took her, just for a second, and I have never forgotten that look. Margaret looked at her hands. 2 weeks later, I tried to find the records for the girl. Her admission, her care, the details we had recorded, all of it was gone, as though she had never been there at all. The trail led to the orphanage where Grace had grown up. Victoria arrived with her lawyers and an authority she had spent days legally assembling. The kind of authority that meant doors had to open and filing cabinets had to be unlocked and questions had to be answered. What she found in the archived records, old boxes stored in a damp basement room that smelled of dust and old paper, was a partial record. Most of it had been removed, but some of it remained, perhaps overlooked, perhaps simply forgotten. A girl had arrived at the orphanage 27 years ago with no identification. Estimated age, 16 to 17. Hair, dark. Eyes, dark brown. No memory of family. No name. In possession of one ruby necklace on a gold chain. They had given her the name Grace because she needed something to be called. They had given her an estimated birth year and put her in the system with the name they had chosen, erasing the mystery of her origins with paperwork designed to move children efficiently through a system that was always overwhelmed. She had grown up there, then aged out. She had been told her past records were lost. She had believed it because she had no reason not to. Victoria sat in the basement of that orphanage for a long time after the lawyers had finished their work. She sat with a folder open on her knees. A single sheet of paper. A description of a girl who had arrived with nothing but a necklace and a hole where her memory should have been. And Victoria thought, she was alive. All this time, she was alive. And someone made sure I would never find her. Victoria went home and called her most trusted financial lawyer, a woman named Catherine who had worked with her for 30 years and who had, in that time, proven that she could be trusted with anything. I need you to go back, Victoria told her. 27 years back. I need to understand what happened to the family estate after Isabella disappeared. Catherine came back 48 hours later with a careful face and a thick fold of her own. What the documents showed was this. At the time of Isabella's disappearance, the Harrington family trust had been structured in a particular way. Both Ethan and Isabella were named as future beneficiaries. Isabella's inheritance, including a significant portion of the business equity, would have come to her upon her 21st birthday. When Isabella disappeared and was eventually declared legally dead after years of absence, everything passed to Ethan. Everything. One name. One beneficiary. One person who gained in every possible financial sense from the disappearance of a 16-year-old girl. It does not prove anything, Catherine said carefully. Not legally. Not yet. No, Victoria agreed. But it is a reason. She said it quietly, the way people say things that they already knew but did not want to know. His name was Walter. He was 81 years old and had driven for the Harrington family for 12 years, including the year Isabella disappeared. He had left their service shortly after her disappearance. Family atmosphere changed. He told Victoria when she found him, didn't feel the same after. He was living in a small flat above a hardware shop, surrounded by plants and old photographs. He invited Victoria in and made her tea she did not drink, and he told her things he'd been carrying alone for a very long time. On the day Isabella disappeared, Walter had driven the family to their destination. During the journey, there had been an argument, not the whole family, just Ethan and Isabella in the back seat. He had heard pieces of it, though he had tried not to listen. Isabella had found something. He did not know what, but she had been upset. Not tearful upset, but angry upset. The kind of angry that comes from finding out something that felt like betrayal. Ethan had been very calm. He was always very calm. They had arrived. The family had dispersed for the evening. The last time Walter saw Isabella, She was walking with Ethan toward a section of the grounds away from a main building. The next morning, she was gone. Walter had been interviewed by police. He had told them what he told Victoria now. But his statements, the original ones, the true ones, had not appeared in any of the documents from the investigation. Someone had replaced them with a shorter, simpler version that said only that he had driven the family and had nothing further to add. I always wondered, Walter said, if I should have done more, said more, pushed harder. You told the truth, Victoria said. Other people chose to bury it. Walter nodded slowly. Then he looked at her with the careful eyes of a very old man who has kept secrets too long. The young master, he said. He knew more than he said. I always believed that. He had that look, the look of someone waiting to see if a thing they have done is going to come back to them. Now, friends, I want you to take a breath with me, because we are about to go into the deepest part of this story, the part that explains everything. And I promise you, by the time we come out the other side, you'll feel every single emotion a human heart can feel. Before we go there, please comment right now. Are you shocked? Did you suspect Ethan from the beginning? Tell us in the comments. We read every single one of them. And if you have not shared this story yet, please do it now, because this next part is the part no one will believe until they read it. Okay, let us go back. Victoria arranged the DNA test quietly. She did not tell Ethan. She did not tell anyone in the household except Catherine, who handled the logistics with the same careful competence she brought to everything. Grace agreed without hesitation. She sat in the small medical office while the test was done, very still, very straight, holding herself the way she had learned to hold herself over years of not having anyone to lean on. Victoria was in the waiting room outside. They had not talked about what either of them hoped the results would say. They had not needed to. The test was sent to 2 separate labs for confirmation. Results were expected in 10 days. On the 4th day, Ethan arrived at the estate unannounced. Victoria had been expecting it, not the timing, but the thing itself, the moment when Ethan could no longer manage the situation from a comfortable distance and had to come in person. He came into her study and sat down across from her and crossed his legs and looked at her with the calm face he had been wearing his whole life. The face that said everything is fine. I have thought about this. Everything is fine. I've been hearing things, he said, about the woman from the gala, about where this is going. Have you? Victoria said. Mother, I'm concerned about you. This woman has found out who you are, and she's doing exactly what people in her position do. She's telling you what you want to hear. She found a necklace somewhere, bought it, inherited it, who knows, and she's using it to... She did not find it, Victoria said. She has had it since she was brought to an orphanage with no memory and no name. She was 16 or 17 years old. It was around her neck. Ethan was quiet for a moment. That doesn't mean... I have been to the orphanage, Victoria said. I have spoken to Raymond Carter. I have spoken to the nurse at the hospital. I have read the financial records from 27 years ago. The silence that followed was different from other silences. It had a shape to it. It had weight. Ethan uncrossed his legs. He crossed them again. Some small, almost invisible thing changed in his face. Not enough for anyone who did not know him to see. But Victoria had known him his whole life. I see, he said. The DNA results will be back in 6 days, Victoria said. I would like you to be here when we receive them. Ethan stood up. He smoothed his jacket. He looked at his mother with those calm eyes, and behind the calm, she could see it now. She could see it so clearly now. There was something that had been living there for 27 years. Of course, he said. Whatever you need. He left, and Victoria sat alone in her study and felt the long, cold slide of the truth arriving. The results arrived on the 10th day. But before that, the day before the results, something else arrived first. An envelope slid under Catherine's office door. Inside, a USB drive. On the drive was a recording. Audio, 17 minutes long, scratchy with age. It had been recorded on a small device of the kind that were common 27 years ago. The sound quality was poor, but the voices were clear enough. 2 male voices. One was younger. One was older. The younger voice said, she found the documents. She was going to tell my mother. I couldn't let that happen. The older voice said, What exactly did you do? A pause. There was an accident. She fell. It was not supposed to go the way it went. I panicked. I called you because I didn't know what else to do. And the girl, she's alive. She's injured. She doesn't know who she is right now. The head wound did something. She can't remember. A longer pause. Then we can manage this. The older voice said, we can make her disappear cleanly. No body. No evidence. Just gone. She surfaces somewhere with no memory and no name and no connection to your family. She becomes nobody. The younger voice took a long time to respond. She is my sister, it said finally. She was about to take half of everything you're going to inherit. The older voice said simply. The recording ended. Catherine sat with her hands flat on her desk for a long time before she called Victoria. The envelope also contained a key. It took Catherine and Victoria's legal team 3 days to identify the safety deposit box it opened. When they found it, in a bank that had changed its name twice in 27 years, but kept its records, the contents were carefully laid out on a table and photographed before anyone touched them. Inside were the original police investigation documents. The real ones, the versions before the statements, were altered and the evidence was buried. There were photographs. There were signed witness statements. There was a handwritten confession from the older man on the recording, written, it appeared, as a kind of insurance policy. The way people who know they're doing something terrible sometimes record what they have done as though the paper might one day absolve them of something. His name was written at the bottom. His occupation was listed beneath his name. He had been a senior legal advisor to the Harrington family for 30 years. He had died 4 years ago, but he had left the box, and the key had found its way, through a precise path. They would spend months untangling, into an envelope slid under a door on the 9th day after a DNA test was sent to 2 separate laboratories. Someone had wanted this found. Someone had been waiting for the right moment. Victoria asked Grace to come to the estate on the morning the results arrived. Grace came in the gray coat, the one she wore in all seasons. She sat across from Victoria at the table in the sitting room where they had first spoken. The necklace was at her throat. The morning light came to the window and lay across both of them like something gentle. The envelope sat on the table between them. Neither of them moved to open it for a long time. Whatever it says, Grace said finally, I need you to know that these weeks have been... She stopped. Started again. No one has ever looked at me the way you look at me. I don't have a word for what that has been like. Victoria's eyes were bright with something she was holding in very carefully. Whatever it says, she replied, I already know the truth. I have known it for weeks. My body has known it since that night in the ballroom. She picked up the envelope. She opened it. She read it once. Then she placed it flat on the table and smoothed it with her hands as though it were something precious. A 99.998% probability of a biological mother-daughter relationship. Grace was Isabella. Isabella was Grace. She had been alive the whole time. 27 years, alive and alone, and carrying a necklace that was the only remaining thread of a life that had been stolen from her in a single terrible night when she was 16 years old. Victoria reached across the table and took Grace's hands in both of hers. And Grace, who had spent 43 years not being held, not being claimed, not belonging to anyone, sat very still for a moment, and then something in her that had been braced for a very long time stopped bracing. She did not make a sound, but the tears came fast and silent, the way water moves when something that has been blocking it is finally lifted away. Victoria held her hands and wept too, openly, without any dignity at all, without caring in the slightest about dignity. And for that reason, it was one of the most dignified things she had ever done. Ethan was called to the estate that afternoon. He arrived with his own lawyer, which told Victoria everything about what kind of call she had made. He had guessed, or he had been told, or the careful, calculating mind he had been running on his whole life had done the mathematics and arrived at the answer before she gave it to him. He sat down. He was still very calm. Or he was wearing calm the way you wear a coat that does not quite fit anymore. It covered the shape of things, but you could see the strain at the seams. Victoria placed the DNA results on the table. She placed the contents of the safety deposit box next to them. She placed a transcript of the audio recording last. Ethan looked at the items on the table for a very long time without speaking. "I was 17 years old," he said finally. His voice was quiet. "I made a decision that a 17-year-old boy should never have been in a position to make." "You made a decision," Victoria agreed, "and then you made another one. And another. For 27 years, you made the decision every day to let your sister live as nobody while you lived as everything." Ethan was quiet. "I didn't know she had survived," he said. "Not at first. I was told she would be looked after, that she'd be placed somewhere. I told myself that was enough. I told myself she was alive and safe, and that was all that mattered. I believed it because I needed to." "She was not safe," Victoria said. "She was alone. She was homeless as a teenager. She has worked 3 jobs for years. She has had nothing." Ethan looked at the table. "I know," he said, very quietly. "I know." Grace was not in the room for this. Victoria had not asked her to be. This part was not for Grace. This part was something Victoria needed to do alone, as a mother, as a woman who had been deceived for 27 years by the one person in the world she had trusted most completely after Isabella vanished. "The authorities are going to be contacted today," Victoria said. "The legal process will be whatever it will be. But I want to say something to you first, before any of that begins." She looked at her son. "I loved you," she said. "I love you still, in the way that mothers love their children even when their children have done the unforgivable. But I will never forgive you. And you will spend the rest of your life knowing that because of what you chose, your sister spent 27 years as nothing. That is the thing you will carry. I cannot add to it, and I cannot remove it. I just needed you to know that I know." Ethan said nothing. He sat there with the weight of what he had done pressing down on him in a way it apparently had not pressed before. Or perhaps it had always pressed as hard, and he had simply become so practiced at not feeling it that he had forgotten what feeling it was like. When it came back all at once. It became public the way these things inevitably do. Too large to stay contained, too remarkable to stay quiet. It started with journalists who had been tipped off, then a legal filing that became public record, then a statement from Victoria's legal team, then the recording, which someone obtained through channels that would be argued about in courtrooms for years. The news spread fast and loud, and everywhere at once, the way wildfire spreads when the ground has been dry for a long time. The daughter, the necklace, the 27 years, the brother, the cover-up, the orphanage, the detective, the nurse, the recording, the box. People could not stop talking about it. Not just the wealth of it, not just a scandal, but the human thing at the center of it. A woman in a gray coat carrying a tray of champagne glasses. A necklace she had never taken off. A mother who had never stopped looking. Grace, Isabella, did not speak to the media. She asked for privacy, and Victoria's very expensive and very effective legal team ensured she got it, at least as much as was possible. Ethan lost his position in the company within the week. The board did not need to deliberate for long. His legal troubles were only beginning. The criminal process would take years, and the outcome was not certain, and there would be arguments about what a 17-year-old boy could be held accountable for at 44 years remove. The law is a complicated thing, but he was gone from the company, gone from the public face of anything with the Harrington name. The empire his mother had built, and which had grown fat on the inheritance of a missing girl, was no longer his. The first thing Isabella did, she was trying to get used to the name, try it on like a coat that fit, but felt strange because she had never worn it before, was nothing. She went back to her apartment. She sat in it for 3 days. She did not answer the phone, except for Victoria. She sat with the necklace in her hands and let the enormity of everything settle slowly the way sediment settles at the bottom of water when you stop stirring it. 43 years. She had been alive for 43 years, and for 27 of them she had been a person who did not exist to the people who loved her. She had worked and struggled and stretched every dollar across every month and gone to bed tired every night in a room that faced a brick wall, and all that time she had been someone's missing daughter. She had been loved. She had been wanted. She had had a father. He had died 8 years ago, without knowing, who had written her letters she had not known existed, and established a trust fund for her return, and spent the remaining years of his life quietly searching. She had been stolen, not abandoned. Stolen, That distinction mattered more than she could immediately put into words. But she knew it mattered. She felt it clear through to the center of her. The way you feel a thing that is changing how you understand everything that came before it. On the fourth day, she called Victoria. I want to see the house, she said. The bedroom. Whatever is still there. Victoria was quiet for a moment on the phone. I kept it exactly as it was, she said. Isabella breathed. I know, she said. I'd like to see it. The bedroom was exactly as Victoria had said, exactly as it had been 27 years ago. The same colors, the same furniture, photographs on the dresser of a 16-year-old girl with dark eyes and a smile that looked like it was about to say something clever. Isabella stood in the doorway for a long time. Then she walked to the dresser and picked up one of the photographs. The girl in it was the age she had been when everything was taken from her. She studied the face carefully, the way you study a stranger's face. Then, slowly, she recognized it, not as a memory exactly, but as something underneath memory, something that had always been there. I don't remember much, she said to Victoria, who was standing behind her. I'm not sure I ever will. The doctor said the memory loss from that kind of head trauma, the long-term gaps usually don't come back. That's all right, Victoria said. We have time now. We'll make new things to remember. Isabella set the photograph down carefully. On the dresser, beside the photographs, there was a small box, the kind that jewelry comes in, velvet outside, hinged. Isabella had not noticed it at first. She opened it now. Inside was a note, written in a handwriting she did not recognize, but that felt somehow familiar. The way places in dreams sometimes feel like places even when you know you have not. For Isabella, on the occasion of her 16th birthday, may it always remind you that you are known, and you are loved, and you are ours. It was the note that had accompanied the necklace. Isabella stood with it in her hands for a long time. Then she pressed it carefully against her chest and let herself cry properly. The deep, full kind of crying that had nothing restrained about it. The kind she had not allowed herself since this all began, because she had been too busy holding herself together. Victoria put her arms around her daughter and held on. While going through the estate with Victoria in the weeks that followed, Isabella came across a box in the private study that contained her father's correspondence from the years after she disappeared. His name had been Harold. He had died of heart failure 8 years ago. The doctors had said his heart had been weakening for years. Victoria sometimes thought, privately, in the hours when such thoughts were permitted, that a person's heart could weaken from grief the same as from any physical cause. The letters Harold had written were never sent because there was no one to send them to. He had written to Isabella, dozens of letters. Over years, he had written to her, as though she were somewhere reachable, somewhere reading, somewhere just a little beyond where he could see. He had told her about the seasons, about the garden, about things that had happened in the family, about how much he missed her laugh. In one letter, he had written, I know you are alive. I don't have evidence that would satisfy a court, but I know it in the place fathers know things, somewhere past logic, past reason. You are alive, and somewhere, someone who does not know who you are is looking at you and seeing someone ordinary, and they are wrong, and one day the world will know they are wrong. Isabella read that letter 4 times. Then she folded it very carefully and placed it in her coat pocket, the gray coat she still wore, the one with a warm lining, and carried it close. Victoria offered her daughter everything. She offered her the bedroom in the estate. She offered her a legal restoration of her full inheritance, which the lawyers were already working through the necessary processes to arrange. A very large and very complicated arrangement that involved significant sums and would take time, but would eventually give Isabella what had always been hers. She offered her a role in the family foundation, a position with the company, if she wanted it. Isabella listened to all of it with the careful attention of someone who has spent a long time managing with nothing, and therefore does not take the arrival of something lightly. I'm not sure about the business, she said. I've never been a businesswoman. I've been a dishwasher and a cleaner and a waitress, and someone who carries things from one place to another. I don't know what I'd do in an office. You'd learn, Victoria said. Maybe, Isabella said, but what I think I actually want, if I'm allowed to want something specifically, is to do something about the people who are where I was. Victoria looked at her. The children in the foster homes. Isabella said, the ones who age out with nothing. The ones who have no records and no past, and no person to call. The ones who carry their history in whatever small things they happen to have on them. When they were brought in, she touched the necklace at her throat. I know exactly what that is. I know it from the inside, and there are so many of them. The foundation was restructured within months. A new division was established, one focused specifically on supporting young people leaving the foster care system, helping them establish records, trace their histories, find family connections where they existed. It was funded generously and run with the particular fierceness of someone who had something to prove, not to the world, but to every version of herself that had sat alone in a small apartment and felt like nobody. Isabella ran it. She was very good at it. Many months later, on a quiet morning, Isabella sat at the window of a room in a Harrington estate that was now hers. She had moved in slowly, gradually, one small decision at a time until the apartment with a view of the brick wall was behind her, and this was her life now. The city outside was busy and bright and going about itself with the indifference cities always have, entirely unconcerned with what happened to any one person within it. Isabella held the necklace in her hands. She had taken it off for the first time in her memory the night before. She had laid it on the dresser and looked at it from a distance before going to sleep. She had wanted to see what it was like to be without it, just for a night, to see if she could. She had slept well. In the morning she had picked it up again, not because she needed it the way she once had, as the only thread connecting her to something anything, but because she wanted to, because it was beautiful, because it had been given with love by people who were now part of her life, instead of just part of her mystery. It was not a clue anymore. It was not a question anymore. It was just a necklace, a red ruby on a gold chain, warm against her skin, that had made one terrible long journey and ended up exactly where it was always supposed to be. She fastened it around her neck. She went downstairs. She could hear Victoria in the kitchen, talking to someone on the phone in the sharp, decisive voice she used when she was arranging something important, and the sound of it was Isabella's search for the right word. Home, she thought. The sound of it was home. And that, friends, is the story of the necklace. The story of a woman who served champagne in a gray coat and did not know she was a missing daughter. The story of a mother who looked for 27 years and never once let herself believe the looking was over. The story of a truth that waited patiently in the dark until the right moment came to step into the light. If this story moved you, please share it. Leave a comment telling us which part hit you hardest. Was it the moment in the ballroom? The letters from the father? The moment Victoria and Isabella opened that envelope together? We want to know. And if you are out there right now feeling like nobody, feeling like a person without a past, without a name that means anything, without a thread connecting you to something that matters, please hear this. The necklace is always there. Sometimes we just cannot see it yet. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next story.